Hello, my name's Martin, and welcome to Short Stories, brought to you by the National Taichung University of Science and Technology Language Center. Today's short story is called Big Claus and Little Claus. It was first published in 1835 as part of Hans Christian Andersen's collection of fairy tales. It's not one of Andersen's best stories. In fact, critics gave it bad reviews when it was first published. However, I think it's a funny little story about a humble man who outwits his enemies. And that's the kind of story I like. Before I begin the story, I will read the vocabulary and example sentences. After I have read the story, I will read 4 listening comprehension questions. Let's get started. Vocabulary. Look down one's nose. Look down one's nose. The king looked down his nose at the peasants. Hide. Hide. The man used the cow's hide to make a nice pair of boots. Tanner. Tanner. The tanner sold his leather to the shoemaker. Get lost. Get lost. You're not welcome here. Get lost. Knock someone's block off. Knock someone's block off. He threatened to knock my block off if I didn't leave. Sexton. Sexton. The sexton rings the church bells every morning. Something is up. Something is up. The detective knew something was up when he saw the bloody footprint. Speak in tongues. Speak in tongues. No one could understand him because he spoke in tongues. Haggle. Haggle. After haggling for an hour, the 2 merchants agreed on a price. Smirk. Smirk. The thief smirked as he escaped from the police. The story. In a village there once lived 2 men named Claus. One of them had 4 horses, but the other only had 1. To tell them apart, the villagers called the one with 4 horses Big Claus, and the one with 1 horse Little Claus. The story you are about to hear is totally true. The 2 men were neighbors. Big Claus was rather proud and looked down his nose at Little Claus. He pressured him into a bad deal. From Monday to Friday, Little Claus had to lend his 1 horse to Big Claus so he could plow his field. In exchange, Little Claus got to borrow Big Claus's 4 horses once a week on Sunday. On Saturday, the horses were allowed to rest. Little Claus was very happy on Sundays. He had 5 horses to pull his plow, which made him feel very important. "Look at my 5 fine horses," he would say to anyone who passed by his farm. Big Claus didn't like this. "Stop telling people that those are your horses. They're not." Little Claus always apologized and promised never to do it again. But he always broke that promise. One day, Big Claus warned him, "If you say those horses are yours one more time, you'll be sorry." Little Claus swore he wouldn't do it again. "Cross my heart and hope to die," he said. "That can be arranged," said Big Claus. Of course, Little Claus couldn't resist, and when the next stranger passed by his farm, he said loudly, "Look at my 5 fine horses." When Big Claus heard this, he immediately picked up his hammer. went over to Little Klaus's stables and bashed Little Klaus's horse in the head. Little Klaus cried and said, "Oh, my only horse is gone. What shall I do?" "Maybe you could sell his hide to the tanner. You could probably get a few pennies for it," answered Big Klaus. Taking Big Klaus's advice, Little Klaus skinned his dead horse, put the hide in a sack, and started the long walk into town to sell it to the tanner. Along the way, he got lost and it started to rain. Little Klaus found a house and knocked on the door. A woman answered the door and said, "Who's there?" Little Klaus answered, "It's just a poor farmer looking for some shelter from the storm." The woman looked at his old dirty clothes and said, "Get lost. If my husband were here, he'd knock your block off." She then slammed the door in his face. Little Klaus saw a shed next to the house and decided to wait out the storm there. From the shed, he could see inside the kitchen window of the house. He saw the woman with a man at the dinner table. "That's odd," said Little Klaus. "Didn't she say that her husband wasn't home?" Little Klaus looked closer and recognized the man as the town sexton. He also saw that the woman had prepared a feast for him and that they were just about to eat. Just then, Little Klaus heard the sound of an approaching wagon. The woman's husband had returned. Klaus went up to him and asked him for a place to stay until the storm passed. "I have something in my sack that you might be interested in," said Little Klaus. Fortunately, the husband was more kind-hearted than his wife, and he invited Little Klaus into his home. When Little Klaus and the husband walked in, the wife and the sexton scrambled to hide the evidence of their meeting. The wife hid the feast in the oven, and the sexton hid himself in a chest. "Honey, you're home early," said the wife, "and you have a guest." The husband said, "Yes, this is Little Klaus. He is my guest. Please escort him to the kitchen." When they got to the kitchen, the husband pointed at the chest and said, "You can put your sack in there." The wife tried very hard not to look frightened, but Little Klaus knew something was up. When he opened the lid of the chest, he saw the sexton, but he didn't say anything. He threw his stinky wet sack on top of him and sat down at the table. The wife acted as casually as she could and brought out her husband's usual dinner, a bowl of porridge. She gave a bowl to Little Klaus, too. Now, Little Klaus knew there must be a nice dinner hidden somewhere in the kitchen, probably in the oven. So when the husband heard a sound coming from the chest, for the sexton did not like being squished by a foul horse's hide, he had an idea. "What's that?" asked the husband. Before the wife could say anything, Little Klaus said, "Oh, that's the wizard in my sack. He speaks in tongues." The husband was curious. "Really?" he asked. "Yes, really," insisted Little Klaus. He then ordered the wizard to conjure up a delicious dinner in the oven. He opened it and revealed the tasty meal that the wife had prepared for the sexton. "Wow," said the husband. "That's amazing. How much do you want for that sack?" After some haggling, the husband paid Little Klaus 1,000 gold coins. "Oh, would you look at that," said Little Klaus. "The rain has stopped. I should get going. Thank you for your hospitality." Little Klaus then left with a big bag full of money. The next day, Little Klaus saw Big Klaus working in his field. Big Klaus smirked at Little Klaus and asked, "How much did you get for your horse's hide? 5 pennies or 6? Little Klaus smiled and said, "I got 1,000 gold coins for it, actually." Big Klaus couldn't believe it, but he was also very greedy. You mean I could get 4,000 gold coins for my 4 horses? He said. I suppose you could, replied little Klaus. Stupid Big Klaus did not wait to think it over. He immediately went to his stables and killed all 4 of his horses and skinned them. When he got to the town, he tried to sell his skins to the first tanner he saw. 1,000 coins apiece? Are you nuts? Said the tanner. Big Klaus insisted on selling his hides for that price, but no one wanted to pay. Eventually, one of the tanners said, I find your offer insulting, and he started to beat Big Klaus with a stick. Meanwhile, little Klaus was on his farm making a deal to buy 5 horses from another farmer. Look at my 5 fine horses, he said proudly. The questions. Number 1. Why did the villagers call little Klaus little? A. To distinguish him from the other Klaus. B. Because he was so short. C. Because he was so young. D. Because that was his rap name. The answer is A. To distinguish him from the other Klaus. Number 2. Why did Big Klaus kill little Klaus's horse? A. Because he thought it was ugly. B. Because he was hungry. C. Because he was angry with little Klaus. D. Because the horse was sick. The answer is C. He was angry with little Klaus. Question 3. Why were the woman and the sexton so nervous? A. They didn't want Big Klaus to find them. B. They didn't want the husband to find them. C. They didn't want the wizard to find them. D. They didn't like horses. The answer is B. They didn't want the husband to find them. Question 4. What really was in little Klaus's sack? A. A wizard. B. Christmas presents. C. A living horse. D. A horse's hide. The answer is D. A horse's hide. That's the end of today's short story. If you're interested in reading the original, I highly recommend it. It's actually much longer than the version I gave you today, and also much crazier. In fact, the original version, little Klaus is a kind of a jerk, and it gets really bonkers. But anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.